Okay, let's get it started with this grid of categories for a e-commerce. This is actually taken from our store, but it will just do for learning purposes and practicing purposes. So, first thing to do is creating a project. I'm creating a blank project. I'll name this AIC. And here we are, perfect. Next, let's evaluate what we're having here in our design. Basically, we're having a grid with 3 tiles or 3 columns, and for each of those we are having 2 separate elements like this. Okay, so the element at the top is going to contain a picture. The bottom side is going to contain some text. Actually, we're having 2 text strings, and this is going to be a link tile. So let's get hands on that. I'm going to evaluate the width of this block. I'm noticing this is 1420 pixels, so I am going to create a container that is just as that of our design. First, let's get a section built. I'm going to name this section as section number 1, and I'm going to provide some padding to it. I usually do that so that for smaller screens we do not have the elements right next to the border of the screen. Instead of it, I'm going to add another div block that I'm going to name container number 1, and for that container I'm going to select spacing center so that for larger screens this element is centered. Also, I am going to expand this to 100% width, and for the max width I am going to set this value to 1420 pixels just to match the width of our container for this design. Following, I'm going to add another div block that I'm going to call grid number 1, and I'm going to set this to be display grid and 3 columns. Alright, so I'm having 3 columns. I am going to study on the design what the distance between those columns is, and I notice this is approximately or roughly 30 pixels, so I'm going to use 30 pixels. By the way, I always like to use round numbers, so if I'm having 28, this is like, okay, let's just go for 30 pixels. It's kind of more practical and easier to remember and to get consistency with. Also, I never expect designers to go pixel perfect, nor I'm usually interested in seeing something pixel perfect. Good designers often focus on functionality rather than having this to be 30 instead of 28. Anyways, inside of our grid, we're going to create a item that I will name just item for the sake of simplicity during those explanations. Item number 1, and inside of this item I am going to create my link block, which I'm going to call link number 1. So hence that I'm creating the link to be inside the item or the tile of this grid, instead of the link being directly the item that is the inside of the grid. The reason why is that I'm kind of trying to follow the very same approach that the collection list have for Webflow. So a collection list is having those elements like this. Let me show you. Okay, So we're having a wrapper, which is equivalent to this. We're having a collection list, which is equivalent to this grid, and we're having a collection item, which is equivalent to this. Now, if I wanted to use this inside a collection list, and I used this to be a link, I won't be able to just drag and drop it here or do anything at all because I cannot modify the collection item on this Webflow collection list. This is why I used a link to be inside the grid. So if I ever wanted to use this for a collection, I will just drag and drop the link inside of that. Perfect. So I created a link inside of this item. Now I will set the link width to 100%. And inside of it, I'm going to add a picture. So inside of it, I'm going to add 2 div blocks. I'm sorry about mentioning that picture. First, we are adding 2 div blocks. One of those will correspond to the top area of this tile with a picture. So I'm going to name this item top wrapper number 1. And the bottom one, I am naming it item bottom wrapper number 1. Okay, you might have noticed that I name everything in here, and the reason why is that non-named elements can become a headache for their development, or having a large website in which you want to edit things and you expect that some elements have a class name here but they don't. So I just have this approach of naming everything that I'm working with. I did not leave things like non-named divs around my creations. Okay, it's been named. Let's go for the text. So I am having 2 text strings. So I'm going to create 2 in here, and I am going to name those as item text headline number 1. This over here, I'm going to name this as item text tagline number 1. Here we are, perfect. So the next that I'm going to do is to add a picture inside the top wrapper that I previously created. So I'm going to add this picture element over here, and I'm going to name this as item picture number 1. That's it. It's simple, but it will just work. And that picture, for that picture, I'm going to assign a size width of 100% so that the picture gets adjusted to the wrapper that is contained in it. Also, I am going to work now on margins. So I am noticing that between this picture at the top and the text that follows, we're having 13 pixels. I'm going to get this run to 15 pixels, but notice that I'm going to add the margin on the element that is one of each order. I mean, I am not adding margin on an element that is inside the actual element that is going to be separated from that one. No, I'm going to add the margin here, right next to the element that I'm going to have a separation from. And I usually add margins at the elements that are at the top of each order, just for the sake of having consistency on my work. This is nothing that you really have to do because of you must do this. I am only indicating that I used to do that, and the reason is consistency on my work that can pay off very well when trying to create an order project, and then going back to a previous project to edit something and noticing, alright, I know where everything is because of I follow this structure every single time. Now let's work with text. So for text, we're having 16 pixels, regular, and we're having a little separation between characters. This is Helvetica, although for this exercise and for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to just stick to whatever the default font here is. So I'm going to use 16. I usually or slash always use 1.3 or 1.6 AM height for line of that text string. This makes things easier. Using EM as height indicates this program, or I'm sorry, indicates the browser that this is a proportion of the size of that text. This is like saying 1.3 times the size of this text that happens to be 16 pixels. So it is kind of a thing that will make things easier for editing on mobile specifically. Now we're having a separation between those two items of 25 pixels. So I'm going to add here on the element that is right next to each other 25 pixels, like that. Perfect. Now, as for this one here, I'm having this color. Okay, so I'm having this color for text, but actually I am going to add that color here in the link so that it is inherited to every text string that is inside of it. So I'm going to jump towards the link block over here, and in here I'm going to go to typography, color, and I'm going to copy and paste my text. Also, I'm going to create a swatch so that I can use that in the future easily if I wanted to. Now, for this string of text, I'm going to more type options, and I'm going to click on capitalize. And also, I'm going to add a little letter spacing like this, so that it follows the approximately 5 units that I'm having on the sign. Next, let's copy and paste this over here. Let's do the same with the element that is after it. Okay, and now let's work on the styles for this string of text. We can see that we're having approximately 20 pixels for the font size. So I am going to add 20 pixels here. I am using my 1.3 EM that I like to use. This is entirely up to you whether you want like to use it or not. Also, I'm going to align this to the center. And let's see what else we have. We also have letter spacing. I'm going to use 5 for the sake of having something easier or round. I want a rounded number here. Also, I am going to use bold for the weight of this string. So bold it is. Perfect. And there we have it. That's it. Now, you'll notice that this text shouldn't have a underlined decoration. This text over here does not have that. So, how do I get rid of it? Well, if I try to do so by clicking this decoration none on this text, it won't work because of this is only working on the link element, and the link element is right over here. So I will click this non-decoration over the link element. Now I notice that also the underlined decoration disappeared for this second string, but it do require that second string to have a underlined decoration. So no worries, because of I created a non-decoration style for the parent element, the link itself. Now I can, and those styles of non-decorations are inherited to the elements inside. Now I can go to a specific element inside and then click over decoration, underline, and that's it. Here we are. Now, what follows is I'm going to copy and paste this item number 1 on the rest of the grid to complete 3 tiles. And following, I'm going to work on tablets. So for tablets, I'm going to jump towards this section item or element, and I'm going to reduce dependent to 40. Here it is. 40 is just okay, I believe. And now I will go to the grid and I'm going to reduce the columns gap to 20. Also for the rows, although I'm not having rows here, maybe it is just sort of a good idea to prepare this design to contain more information. Also, I'm going to reduce this to 15 pixels. I'm going to reduce this size to 14, and this over here might be just good at 16. Even maybe this could work on 13 pixels. Perfect. So it kind of work, and now I'm going to jump towards mobile landscape. Now on mobile landscape, I believe that I'm going to reduce this a little bit, but first I'm going to change this letter spacing from 5 pixels to some nearby approximate on EM units. I'll explain why in a while. So let's try with 2 EM. That is way too much. Okay, we're talking. And it's way too much. Still, let's do 0.2 EM. Let's do the same here. A little more, perhaps. Here we are, perfect. And the reason I'm doing this is EM will adapt. Remember, EM is a proportion of the size of the text. So if I reduce the size of the text on mobile, because if I'm having EM here, the EM will correspond to the reduced size, so that I do not have to modify the letter spacing in pixels when I reduce this. I am only playing out with this, and the EM units will adapt because if they are a proportional measure. So I believe that mobile landscape is just fine. I will not get this shrinked to columns in here because we're having 3 columns, and it might be a little weird. Also, it doesn't look like it does not look as necessary to get 2 columns here. So next I'm having mobile portrait, and for this I'm going to reduce dependent for the section to 25 pixels. I very often use 25 pixels. You can use 20, maybe 15, 25. It is entirely up to you on how to adapt this design. And we're of course assuming the designer didn't provide you with a layout for responsive. So we're doing on our own. Now another thing that we'll do is to get this to turn this out to 1 column only. And here we are, perfect. So it seems like the only thing that we're missing is to maybe populate this with content just for the sake of getting a pretty thumbnail on this video. But this is actually not necessary. I mean, you already created the HTML. At most, what you can do is just test this with nearby real content. But anyways, let's just get some pictures uploaded to the site. I'm going to use this format, maybe 18% for quality, and let's export this for web. Exporting, and let's get back to this over here. Okay, uploading, and let me use this over here. I am going to add those pictures for randomly without caring that much, and just be I just noticed that this picture over here is a little bit different in proportions. So I fixed it, and I'm going to export this again. Because of this exercise is not focused on SEO or any of that, or content or anything. We just want to build a very quick layout. I am not focusing at all on the content to be real. However, I want a pretty thumbnail to be created for my design. So just a second. And here we are. Perfect. Perfect. So now we're having our pictures. Let's just copy and paste this text over here as well. Then again, just for the sake of getting a pretty thumbnail on YouTube. And also, this exercise is pretty awesome for us to try to approach the design the best possible way in terms of containing actual content. So I realized after having copied that this line got too large. So I preferred to reduce this letter spacing to 0.1 em. And now it looks kind of better. So that's almost it. Let's get this published and test for quality. Perfect. So let's test this for quality over different layouts on responsive interfaces, and it looks good, I think. So that's it. Perfect.